Welcome back everyone, Dan Vega here, and today we're going to be building a Spring Security login form with Java Template Engine. Now, I've been doing a bunch of videos on JTE lately because it was added to the Spring Initializer, and I think it's a really great templating engine. So if you're unfamiliar with it or want to learn more about it, I'll leave a playlist in the description below. One of the questions I got was, hey, this is great, but can you use it with Spring Security? And the answer is yes, because at the end of the day, all we're doing is taking objects or types or principles or authorization and using that in the controller, and we can send that down to the model. So we can make that available to the template and use it however we like. We can display a username, an email, get authorities, check for CSRF tokens, all of those things we can do right in our templates. So we're going to build out a fun example today because I know that this is one of the things that a starter that I need to go ahead and create a new application with. So I think this will be a really good starting point for you to kind of kick off your applications. Not full featured by any means, but we'll definitely give you a starting point. So what I want to do is I want to head over to the browser. We'll take a look at the example that we're going to build today, and then we'll go through and build it together. All right, so here is the final application, a simple home screen. So this is not secured, so you can come to this screen. You can imagine this having whatever you want on your home screen. And then we can go ahead and click the login button, and you're brought to this sign-in screen. So you can sign in a few different ways. You can sign in with a username and password. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So admin and admin123, and I'll go ahead and sign in, and you see that it's taking me to this dashboard. So the dashboard is secured. You have to be authenticated to go ahead and view this. We also see that it displays the username, in this case the username, in other cases maybe an email address. And then it has some user information below. So here's the username and the roles. In this case, the Spring Security role of admin. We can go ahead and log out. We can come back and log in. And we also have OAuth2 support here. So we can log in with Google or GitHub. You can add other authentication providers if you want to, but I'm going to go ahead and log in as Google. I'll log in with my main danvega@gmail.com, and I'll go ahead and continue. And now I'm logged in. So now I'm logged in and I have my username up here, which is my email address. And these are the different roles that I have been awarded. I'll go ahead and click log out one more time, and I'll go ahead and log in as GitHub. And again, same thing. Here are the roles that I have. So I think this is pretty exciting. This is a nice sign-in screen built with Tailwind. I didn't build it. I'll show you how I kind of put this together really quickly. And again, I think it's a great starting point for your applications. If you're using JTE, if you're using Spring Security, really good place to get started. Now, I will also leave a description link in the description below to this GitHub repository, Spring Boot OAuth demo. It has some information about this project. All the code is there, the prerequisites, kind of a quick start. You will have to set some environment variables. If you want to just get started quickly, you could hard code these in the application.yaml if you wanted to. But it also has some information on how to go ahead and set up those credentials. So if you want to include Google, you need to go to Google's Cloud Console, go in there and set up an API and services and fill out those credentials. And then it also gives you the URLs that you'll need in there. So I'm running this locally. The authorized JavaScript origin is localhost 8080. And this is the URI that you want to put in the redirect URI. So those are important in the README. And then there's one for GitHub OAuth setup as well. Then once you do that, we can come into the configuration and use those. Again, I'm using an environment variable there. If you want to get quickly started, hard code it, but please do not check that in. That's why I like to get into kind of a repetition of using environment variables so I don't make sure I don't check those in. Even that, I think GitHub is getting really good at, hey, I'm not going to allow you to push this commit because I see some credentials in there. Then we have some project structure, key dependencies, and things you can kind of troubleshoot if you're having some issues. Now, I'll bring this one up too. Again, that nice looking screen, this is something that would have prevented me a while ago from doing things because I want a sign-in screen, but man, I just don't do it every day. I have enough skills to be dangerous, but it takes me a while to do that stuff. Now with AI out there, I went in there and I said, hey, I want a sign-in form with an email address and a password with options for Google and GitHub using HTML and Tailwind. And because it's trained on the internet, it has a whole bunch of history and training data on what a Tailwind login form can look like. And so what we got out of that was something that I think looks really nice and gives me a starting point. Now, I don't have to spend a day tinkering with this UI. I have something that is ready to go. So with that, we are going to kickstart this project by heading over to start.spring.io. We're going to pick Java, Maven. We're going to pick the latest version of Spring Boot. I'm going to fill this in dev.dan Vega. We'll call this OAuth demo, right? Put this in a main package, and I'm using JDK 23. You want to be on at least JDK 17. So I'm going to build a web application. I'm going to bring in the support for JTE. So again, you can use different template engines here. Timeleaf, really great one. Groovy, Apache, Mustache. JTE was recently added to the Spring Initializer, so I've been playing around with that lately. So I'll go ahead and choose that. You'll also want to choose Spring Security. And finally, you also want to choose the OAuth2 client support. This is integration for Spring Security's OAuth2 OpenID Connect client features. And this will allow us to kind of plug in those Google and GitHub credentials. With that, that's all we need. We can go ahead and click this generate button. It will download a zip file. You can open it up in whatever IDE or text editor you're most productive in. For me, that's going to be IntelliJ's Ultimate Edition. And with that, I think we have everything we need. Let's write some code. All right, so here we are in the IDE. Now I'm going to try something a little different today. There are times when I think it's really helpful for us to code along together. In this instance, I have a lot of template code. I'm just going to copy and paste it in, and we'll walk through it together. The code is all in the repo if you want to go ahead and pull that later or give this a try yourself. But I don't find a lot of value in like typing out every single line of code together. Let me know what you think. If you want me to kind of walk through some things a little bit more, I'm happy to do that. But I figured I'd keep this a little bit shorter today, and we'll just walk through on how I kind of put this together. So with that, I'm going to get me off of the screen here so you can see all of the code. And I think a good place to start with this is the security config. So we're going to go ahead and say security config. This is going to be a class. We're going to mark this with @configuration, right? And we will enable web security, and that will give us our security config. So the first thing you do, again, I've done videos on this in the past, when we want to go ahead and override the default security for Spring Security, we need to create a new bean, and this is going to be of type security filter chain. So we'll say security filter chain, and we'll call this security filter chain. We'll take in our HTTP security, and we'll call this HTTP. And then what we'll end up doing is returning. So we'll return, actually, I'll just do HTTP. And then we'll go ahead and set that up. And then let's see. So I'm going to copy this in just so we can cut down on some of this. And we'll just kind of walk through what this does. So let me do this. That looks a little better. And then we need to add an exception here. And this will be our configuration. So the first thing we do is authorize HTTP requests. What we're saying here is that anything to /, login, or error, we're going to permit all. We're allowed to go ahead and visit those. But anything else, you need to be authenticated to view. So this will be the dashboard. The dashboard was that hidden template that you needed to be authenticated for. Next, we set up our form login because we're defining a custom login form. So we're saying, hey, the login page is at /login. Default success URL means when we log in successfully, I want to go ahead and forward us to the dashboard, and we can permit all on those. Next is our OAuth2 login. So we have form login, that is the username and password. OAuth2 login is Google and GitHub. Again, that's going to be at /login. That's going to have a default success URL of /dashboard. We're also going to have a logout feature. When we log out successfully, we're just sending you back to the home page. And that's our security for this. We also want to define a user in the system. You could do this in application.yaml. I'm going to do this right here. Again, Probably shouldn't do this in a real world app, but we just need a single user for this test case, so I'm okay with that here. So we're defining a user named admin with a password of admin123. This is an in-memory user. We go ahead and set that up. So now we've kind of overridden the default Spring security settings. We have our own security. We are in a good place here. The next thing I want to do is create a new controller called, let's start with the login controller. And this is going to be a class, and we're going to define a couple things here. So first off, this is a controller. So we're going to have basically two mappings in here. We're going to have a get mapping for slash, and this is going to be, login. And this is going to return a string called login. And at the end of the day, this just returns the page that we're going to set up. So we'll say pages login. So that will be a template. That will be a JTE template for login. We'll also go ahead and set up a simple home one. We could put this in a different controller, but it's okay for today. So I'll say that, and this is home, and this is going to return pages home, right? So that looks good so far. Now we haven't really done anything to the login yet, but that's okay. We're going to set up some JTE templates. So I'm going to go ahead and say new file. Again, I've done this in previous videos. This is given to me by the documentation, or I think IntelliJ actually recommended it, to put a .jte root file in the root of the JTE templates. So we'll go ahead and follow that suggestion. And then I'm going to create a new directory for layout. And I'm going to create a new directory for pages. So this will be our default layout that every kind of template will use. And then each page will be like the home, the login, and the dashboard. So in layouts, I'm going to create something called default.jte. In here, I'll paste some code. So we're going to be using the CSRF token. So I import that. I also import content. This comes from Java Template Engine. And this just says, hey, we're going to replace this content here with whatever we're getting from one of the templates that we're going to use. But this is wrapped around each of those templates. So, so far so good. Let's go ahead and next create a home template. So this will be just that login screen, or that home screen where you click a login button. So we'll come in here and create a new file. We'll call this home.jte. I'll paste some code in here. Again, we're using that default layout. We have some Tailwind code here. Again, I just generated this. I didn't write this myself. Welcome. There's a login button. That login button forwards to /login, which again is going to be the template that displays the login form. And so let's go ahead and create this. This is where it gets a little interesting. So let's go ahead and create login.jte, paste this in, and talk through this. So we have our error in our error message. This is something we're going to check for, because if something goes wrong, we want to actually display that on the login form. Are they logged out? No. Here's a login message, which is null. And then again, our CSRF token. So we're using that default layout. We have this sign into your account. If there's an error, we're going to display it. If there's a logout, we can display it. But I think we just actually send them back to the home page. So, but if you wanted to like display a logout message, you could here. And then we have our login form. So we're checking if that CSRF is not equal to null. If it's not, we want to go ahead and place those values in a hidden input type. We have our username and our password fields, so we'll fill those in. A button to submit, so that will sign us in. And then we have our OAuth2 buttons, or you can continue with, and then we have one for Google and we have one for GitHub. And again, I kind of generated that from AI, so I have that nice form. So those are going to forward to these specific things. So this is, again, part of Spring Security and the OAuth2 client support. This is where we're actually sending that to. We're sending that over to OAuth2, authorization, and Google. And that should be everything we need for our login form. Now, to get some of that information into the login form, I got to do a couple things. So I'm going to come back to this login controller. And I'm going to replace this with some other code so we can take a look at it. And all we're doing here now is we're getting in the request. We have the model. These are supplied to you by Spring. And then we have this error for a string and a string for a logout. So if the error is not equal to null, then we want to go ahead and populate some of those attributes, right? We want to say that there is an error and here's the value. Now this could be more detailed, but for now we're just saying, hey, invalid username or password. Same thing for the logout. And then we're adding the CSRF token. So we're trying to get that from the request. If it's there, we want to go ahead and add it to the model so that it's used in our templates. And then that's it. And then we're forwarding you on to the pages login. So I think we have one more template to kind of walk through, which is the dashboard. Again, this is the dashboard where you're going to be sent that is secured. So you have to be authenticated. So dashboard.jte. We'll go ahead and save that. And we have a username, which is blank, an email null. We are using a collection of granted authorities. So this could be something like simple granted authority, but this is called authorities and this is equal to null. Once we are logged in and we pass those authorities down, we want to go ahead and use those. Again, we haven't built out this controller, so I'll show you that in a second. So we're using that default layout. We have this dashboard. We are displaying username. We are displaying email if it's not null. And then we have this form to log out. Again, we need that CSRF token, and a button just logs us out and default sends us back to the home page, right? Then we have some user information where you can display the username or the email. And then we can display the roles. So that authorities is a collection. We can iterate over that. So var authority of authorities, and then we'll just get the authority. So you see with like Google, we had a bunch of different authorities. We can go ahead and iterate over that and display each one. And then if the email is not equal to null, we're going to go ahead and display the email. So that's our template. What we need now is our dashboard controller, and we can go ahead and create that in here. So I'm going to say dashboard controller, and this is going to be a controller, and then we'll need a mapping for this. So this is get mapping / dashboard, and then this is going to return a string. We'll call this dashboard, right? And this is going to take in authentication. This is going to need the servlet request. We'll call this request, and then the model from there, we'll call this model. All right, and then at the end of the day, this is just going to return pages / dashboard. But as you remember, we had some information in there that we need, right? So how can we get all of that information we need? One of those things was username, one was email, one was authorities. But based on the different type of authentication, we are sending different information into that template. So what I want to do is check the authentication. So if authentication is not equal to null and authentication.is authenticated. Now we know we're authenticated, so we can get the principal. So principal is equal to authentication.getPrincipal. And now what I can do is do a little pattern matching on this, because in one instance, I'm going to have a user details object. That is if you log in with admin and admin123. In another instance, I'm going to have an OAuth2 user. And again, those have different, that we actually have an email for. So what I want to do here is basically use pattern matching to say if principal is an instance of user details, we'll say user details. So before pattern matching, we had to like check that and then assign a variable to it. We can do that all in one right now, which is really nice. So if it's that, I'm just going to copy this. We're not going to type this out. We're going to add a couple of attributes to the model. One is the username. So we can say userdetails.getUsername, and the authorities is userdetails.getAuthorities. Else if the principal is an instance of the OAuth2 user, we can call that OAuth2 user, Then we are going to do a couple different things, but we're going to assign some of those same attributes. So we're going to say, whoops, let's do that. We're going to say the username is OAuth2user.getAttribute name. The email is going to be getAttribute email, and then the authorities is getAuthorities. So now we have all that same information. The other thing we'll want to do in the dashboard is, again, assign that CSRF token, because the login logout form actually uses that. And then I think we're done with the dashboard. So I think the only thing left to do is we need to do a little configuration here. I'm going to delete this in favor of application.yaml. I find like when I have a lot of stuff to kind of type in, it just kind of gets a little easier. But you can certainly do this in application.properties. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this in, and we'll just take a look at this. So this is our application name. For Spring Security OAuth2, we have client registrations. We have one for Google. We have one for GitHub. Here we're defining the scopes. Here is the client ID and the client secret. This is what you need to get from your login. And again, that information is in the README, so you can go figure out how to do that. I have externalized this to an environment variable. If you don't want to have to do that, you can always come in here in IntelliJ and say environment variable. Right here, we can kind of pop this open, and you can create a bunch of those in here and set those values so they're not hard-coded in your code. Or again, if you just want to like get this up and running first and test it out, you can go ahead and hard-code this in here, but don't check those into Git. This is for Java Template Engine, and then I put this in here, but it's still at error. Logging level org, Spring Framework, Spring Security here. If you want more info on things that are going wrong, a good way to do that is change this to debug or info, and you get a lot more info in the console, which will help you kind of debug what's going wrong. Okay, so I think we have everything we need. Again, I've done this before. I had it running already. It should work, but let's see if it works. Let's go ahead and run this. And our application started. Let's go back to here. And so here is our main screen. Again, it's just using that default template. It's the home one, has a login button, so it goes to the login screen. This is going to use the user details. So admin 1, 2, 3. We're gonna sign in and, whoops, okay. I wish I could stop that from coming up. And actually, we have no information there, which is interesting. I'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to go ahead and click Login. I'm going to try with Google, and we'll continue. And I'm still have no information there. Let's see. Did I? I made a little mistake here. We don't want to check if it's null. We want to check if it's not equal to null. Sorry, that's all right. Things happen, no big deal. Let's see if we can get this to work again. So I'm gonna go to my home. I'm gonna click login, admin 1, 2, 3. There we go. Gosh, I wish I need to like turn these off. Okay, let's log out. We won't try both of these, but let's log in as Google. And there we go. So there you have it. I thought that was a pretty fun demo to put together. Again, I had a bunch of questions around Spring Security and Java Template Engine. Again, you are simply taking whatever is in the request or in the controller, what's available to you there, and you're putting it in the model. So you can send the authorities down. You can go ahead and look at the user's authorities or roles and check something. All the things that you could do previously in other template engines, you can do here. So I thought this was a fun example to put together. And for me, I hope it's helpful to you, but for me, this is a great starting point. So the next time I need to start a Spring Security application that has a nice login form, that has OAuth2 support, I've got a starter that I think I can run with right away. So if you think that's true too, please do me a favor, go ahead and star this repo and let me know in the comments below if you found this useful. But hey friends, I hope you learned something today. I know I did putting this together. If you did, you can do me a big favor. I would really appreciate it. Do me a big favor, leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy coding.